Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, boxing and MMA fans from around the world. Introducing from Bassett, California, the third man in the ring, Popeye Ray.
Hey, welcome to Third Man in the Ring. I'm your host, Popeye Ray. Before we start, get on YouTube, get on Patreon, subscribe, share this. You guys want to hear some good interviews. Today we have an awesome interviews. I get constant texts and messages and emails. What was that doctor thinking? Today we're talking to Dr. Ali Khan. He goes to the weigh-ins, he works numerous fights, he works numerous MMA fights. He's just all over. So today we're gonna hear how he started his practice here. We're gonna hear about weight cutting, what a fighter goes through in a knockout, what does he approve, what does he doesn't approve, how me and him and other officials connect, referees. So today I want you to give a warm welcome to Dr. Ali Khan. Thank you, Doc. Thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So hey, Doc, you got a beautiful practice here, man. This is awesome, man. I appreciate you letting us film here. We're here in Long Beach. Where at?
Long Beach, right downtown, pretty much on the corner of Pine and 3rd Avenue.
Beautiful place, guys. If you're interested, we put some content on this video, and he's gonna give a little tour of his practice here, you know. And plus, he's gonna do a little surgery on me. Hopefully, it'll work, man. We're working on that?
We're working on that.
So hey, Doc, give us a little background about where you grew up, you know what I mean, how you got into the game.
Yeah. So we're originally from South America, Guyana.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know where it is exactly. It's actually south of Venezuela.
Okay.
A lot of politics behind that. I won't get into it.
Yeah.
But originally from there, we moved to the U.S. just for a better opportunity. My parents wanted us to have more opportunities, considering it's not the richest country, certainly in South America.
Is it fair to say Venezuela is a third world country?
Venezuela?
As far as you know, poverty and civil wars and.
I'm not sure. I can't answer it about Venezuela. Yeah. I know that they were a very affluent country for a while. A lot of the Miss Universe used to come out of Venezuela, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Things change over time. It is what it is. Guyana is more on the map now because a large amount of oil reserves was found there, and they're really trying to build up the country and really make it what it is. It's really beautiful, well deserved for everything that it has.
So how old were you when you came over?
7, 8 years old. It was really when we were small, you know. But we moved up through the South, you know, landed in Texas first, then Tennessee, and then eventually spent most of the time in New York, right? So when most people ask me, where are you from? I tend to say New York. I mainly grew up over there, went to school, did my undergraduate work over there, and did my training in New York, and also came back to do teaching. I was a teaching attending at Jacobi Hospital in the Bronx. Gave me a good opportunity to explore the Bronx a little bit more, you know, because we lived in Long Island, so you don't really get out to the city. It's too much of a hassle to get out to the city sometimes, but...
It's a fast city, huh, New York?
It is. It's a fast city. A lot of things are really at your fingertips at any time of the day. But being in the Bronx, I was able to join one of the gyms over there. I started training. Really got an idea what a fighter has to go through to get themselves from beginning and really up to a professional level.
And that's, excuse me, Doc, that says a lot about a doctor that works ringside. He knows what the training goes through. He's just not a doctor, because in my opinion, Doc, tell me if I'm wrong, some doctors that don't know the game can jump to conclusion or not even do anything because they don't know the game. But Doc knows the game, you know?
It's true. You have to get an idea what the fighter's going through.
Exactly.
And certainly when you get to training in these environments, you get to train with people who are looking for a way out of these environments too. And this is really what they're looking for, to say, okay, well, this is going to be my cash flow, or this is what's going to bring my family out of here. And, you know, there are other goal might be, I just want to be one of the top
one of the
echelon fighters,
champion,
you know,
yeah.
I want to be a champion. So it's interesting, talking to these guys and training. It's brutal. It's really brutal, but it was the best shape I had ever been in. I'll tell you that. Man, I was in the gym for years. I used to lift pretty good. A buddy of mine, he was a professional, bodybuilder, and we got up to lifting a lot. And I'll tell you, I was never in the same shape as when I was training with boxing.
The cardio was ridiculous.
Cardio was ridiculous. I was stronger than I ever was in the gym. It was really impressive, and it's, something that I still try to do. I remember the routine, it was so like every day it was the same thing over and over again, and, you do it, for me, I was only doing it about 3 hours a day, when you get to an upper level and you're really invested in it, these guys are training 6-8 hours a day or more, So it's really, it helped me get a lot of insight because I knew at the end that I wanted to work with these guys, right? So even getting
it was a thought already, you were already thinking about it, huh?
Yeah, even prior to that, we grew up watching. My dad is a huge boxing fan, so we grew up watching boxing. Funny enough, he would never really get the fights. We would watch it on scrambled cable all the time and just hear it. So it was like we were just listening to it on the radio pretty much, But, I had the opportunity to meet James Toney the other day, and that was cool. I mean,
tough fighter. I'm trying to get an interview with him right now.
Yeah, he was really a great guy, and first thing I told him, I was like, I grew up watching you on scrambled cable. That was it. But I remember his fights, and really impressive fighter, But we grew up in watching it. My dad was really into it, and I knew I wanted to work with fighters in one way or another, whether it be therapy, medical, or better yet, ringside. So that was it.
So when did what is the criteria to be a ringside doctor? What does Mr. Foster hold us for? What is he? Do you just sign up and, hey, I want to be a ringside doctor, or what does Andy Foster put you through?
Well, we are put through some training. We have to understand what we're looking at from the fighter's perspective and also from a medical perspective. We want to know that this fighter is fit to be in the ring, to go through what they're about to go through, and they're physically able to manage this. And then we also want to understand a little bit more about the fighter's history, like how much have they really taken, and are they really able to compete at this level. We're also looking for injuries that might prohibit them from being able to defend themselves properly. These are all things that we have to be able to recognize, right? And so criteria-wise, really it comes with a lot of experience. I started in amateurs, and I worked with USA Boxing for many years, even when I was in New York. And, I really got to see kind of where the levels were in terms of, when a fighter has gone too far, skill differences and skill levels. You have some guys that are fighting still in the amateur league, but they already have 60 to 80 amateur fights, and they're fighting some guy that just started on his second, So you see a difference. You start to learn the footwork. You start to learn what you're looking at, and when a fighter might be in trouble, and the stoppage threshold is much lower in amateur. So we understand.
It's really safety
yes.
in amateurs,
Yes.
But going forward a little bit, we'll jump back. When you got to California, was that your first thought? Besides getting the practice going, hey, I'm going to get into the boxing, the MMA game.
I eventually wanted to do that. I eventually wanted to do professional. I liked working amateurs because these were young kids. They were just coming up through the ranks. It was great. But I got to the point where I said, okay, I really feel I've learned what I need to learn. I need to push my... But
let me interrupt you, Doc. Do you deal with cuts in amateurs?
Not really.
Not really, no.
Not really. So cuts are really, the minute a fighter gets a scratch, that's it. We're letting them.
And and a lot of you fans know, a lot of you fans don't know, in amateurs, it's a really safety emphasized, but then in pros it's safety too, but it's just a different criteria. In amateurs, you get a serious nosebleed, they'll even stop it sometimes, right?
Yeah. Amateurs, we do want to ensure that both, from the referee standpoint and our standpoint, that the fighter is really going to progress in the career. So, we're not looking for them to be severely injured in an amateur league before, making it to the next step. Because really amateur, for anything that you do, it's a learning process. Even as a professional, you're still going to learn, but in amateurs, it really is focused on a learning process.
So when you get to California, let's give props where props is due, out of respect. Dr. Wallace is the chief, is that what's his title? Is chief doctor here?
Yes. He's
Did you have to go through him, or did you have to go through Andy Foster, or how did that work?
Yeah, Dr. Wallace is fantastic in making sure that we're all prepared to sit ringside and understand what we're looking at, and he's great. He'll catch you off guard and you're like, what did you just see in that fight? And you're like, oh God, I was on, no, I'm sorry. You can't be on your phone.
Can't you see I'm texting you?
So in the middle of a text.
That's right.
So he keeps you on your toes, and he really is watching everything that you're doing, and I appreciate that because he's a wealth of information. He's been doing it quite a bit of time, and 30-something years, I believe.
Yes.
He really makes sure that you know what you're doing before you're sitting ringside making a decision on somebody's.
Well, let me put it this way, and I hope I'm not offensive towards you, Doc. When Dr. Wallace is there, it feels like the big cheese is there. When Dr. Khan is there, it feels like my big brother's there that can still get a chin check me, but I feel a little bit more like, more, not as nervous, but either way, Dr. Wallace, if you give me that look during a fight, and it's serious, I know I gotta be on my toes. But with that said, Doc, here's a few questions that a few of the fans that came at me. So how many doctors need to be ringside legally in California?
In California, we have to have at least 2 on a professional fight. On a larger fight, we might have 3 or 4 doctors present, but we have to have two doctors.
Mandatory?
Yeah.
Can't be 1, right?
No.
Does it matter if there's only 5 fights or 6 fights or 12 fights? Got to have 2 mandatory, right?
2, yeah.
And you know what, Doc? Give the fans a little insight on how we need an ambulance there at all time. Because sometimes we've gone to shows, you've been there, where the ambulance hasn't came on time and the show it's sitting there. It's like stale for hours. Why do we need an ambulance if we have a doctor?
Yeah, so we're not the ones transporting the fighter if necessary. So the fighter goes down and they're in what we consider imminent danger of a life-threatening emergency, then the ambulance has to be there to take them right away. And we work with a lot of the ambulance companies pretty closely to ensure that we're all on the same page, that we know if a fighter goes down, we've decided the fighter needs to go to the hospital, they're going right away.
And again, fans, before a show, I know a lot of you guys don't see it or don't pay attention. You'll see Dr. Khan or whoever's working the fight, they're walking with the stretcher and then paramedics going through a mimic evacuation, right?
Yeah, that's really important, because even if we're working the same event location over and over again, the setup is always a little bit different. So from the ambulance or the paramedic standpoint, they have to ensure that they can get from where they are to the ring unobstructed without any problems, and we can get that injured fighter out of the building as quick as possible. So we do have a protocol that's set where there are a number of people involved. It's not just us and the paramedics trying to figure this out. It's security, it's the inspectors, it's everybody that's involved. The inspectors are really important in this, and they've been fantastic in just keeping everything controlled until we get that fighter out of the building. And we've been pretty fortunate, that everything is pretty seamless, and a lot of it has to do with this protocol that we run before the fights every single time.
And let me toot California's horn.
Yeah.
Andy Foster is a training boss. Yeah. I mean, he's on top of us from a referee to a judge to an inspector to a doctor and back up to a doctor to inspector to a referee. We are constantly being trained. California, I'm sure we have the most fights. Mm-hmm. I think we're second to Japan.
Yeah.
We have the most fights, MMA as well.
Yeah.
So we're constantly busy.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? He's just always always safety. And with that said, Doc, one of the biggest things I got a message from the fans was, what's the big deal on weight cutting? Well, you know, they've been doing it for what, over 100 years?
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
In a world where legal battles are fought every day, one law firm stands ready to defend your rights. Trevino Perez and Associates believes in justice for all. Led by trial attorney Will Trevino Perez, the TPA law team offers top-notch legal representation that you can trust.
Hey guys, when I needed someone to fight for me, Will landed a knockout punch.
Don't face your legal challenges alone. Contact Trevino Perez and Associates today. Visit tpalawyers.com. You can email or call 310-443-4251. Are you stuck? Need someone to tow your vehicle? Call Rivera Towing. Rivera Towing was established in 2018. They serve the Inland Empire and surrounding counties and specialize in expedited services. You can reach them at 951-941-0001 for a quick, reliable tow.
And hey guys, mention Third Man in the Ring podcast and get 25% off.
Rivera's Towing was voted Business of the Year in 2013. They're the fastest growing tow company in the Inland Empire and offer great customer service. Call them for all your towing needs and don't forget to mention Third Man in the Ring.
We want to also thank our friends at Kelstar Roofing. Kelstar Roofing specializes in residential roofing, installing concrete roofing tiles, and composition asphalt shingles. They have been serving the Inland Empire for over 31 years. Call on Kelstar Roofing for all of your roofing needs.
Yeah, weight cutting is an issue. There's a number of ways of looking at why a fighter might be cutting weight and cutting so much weight. So previously we know that sometimes it's to have a little advantage over the other fighter. You know,
because why? Do they come in super heavy the next in their fight?
Yeah, they come in super heavy the next day, and then the other fighter is like, oh my God, they're so much heavier. You know, it is what it is. But we've come to understand over time that your body just doesn't handle it the same way. And weight cutting is, from a fighter's perspective, they're understanding it in terms of making weight, and they want to maybe have some sort of benefit when they rehydrate, right? Depending on how many pounds they rehydrate. But from a solely medical standpoint, your brain is getting dehydrated, your kidneys are trying to figure out how to balance that sodium change, because most of it is water loss, right?
And Andy Foster's super hard on that weight cutting issue.
Yeah, it's really important that, it puts a fighter at risk. There's a lot of data out there that shows that if your performance on rapid weight loss and rapid weight gain within 24 hours doesn't necessarily put you at an advantage for anything else. Your body just doesn't acclimate that quickly within 24 hours. You're at a higher risk for brain injury, you're at a higher risk for kidney injury, you're at higher risk for a lot of things that happen. So it is something that we've recognized in terms of fighter safety, and that really is the key issue, is what are we doing to ensure fighter safety with this process. So we don't want anyone to get severely injured. We want it to be a competitive sport for what it is, but we're not looking for major injuries in this.
So hey, Doc, if this guy comes in and he drops, he has to drop 4 or 5 pounds, and he's literally saying, I can drop it, give me a couple hours, because it's a second weigh-in, am I right?
Yeah.
And he does cut that serious weight. How do you feel about that? Let me get it from you. What does Dr. Khan feel about that?
Seems like a lot of weight to lose in a short period of time. They really don't have a lot of weight. Once they weigh in the first time and then they come back, they really don't have a lot of time to drop that weight. So if somebody's dropping 4 or 5 pounds, I'm gonna check them thoroughly just to make sure that they first of all, how did they do that so quickly?
You'd be surprised, Doc.
Yeah.
I've heard, I'm 6 years old, I'm a lot older than you. I remember back in the day, some guys were dropping laxatives 2-3 days prior to the weigh-in.
Yes, and that's another thing, is how are they losing the weight?
Exactly.
And that's what we pick up on. Like, some guys will be on diuretics, and you don't know. You got to, ask a couple more questions. Are they on laxatives? Are they on, carb cutting, really, really very minimal? And, you kind of have to get an idea of where this fighter's at. Because at the end of the day, they may rehydrate and be fine during the fight, but how long are they going to be fine? It's a performance thing.
Does that affect them in the future, doing that to their bodies? Is there any study on that yet?
There's not really. I mean, there's some studies about kidney injury, especially when you dehydrate your body so much. Anytime we've ever treated people in the hospital for severe dehydration and their kidneys are almost shut down, they don't just recover within 24 hours of hydration. It takes a couple days for your kidneys to kick back in. And
well, I don't know the details of it, but Ortiz, he was going to fight in Texas, and because he couldn't make weight, he was so dehydrated they had to send him to the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, that just social media saying that. Obviously, I don't know the details, and I mean no disrespect to Ortiz, but obviously it was so bad because the bottom line was he was weight cutting. The bottom line. What came of it, why he went to the hospital, I just heard from other doctors this could have been the possibility, that could have been the possibility. It affects everybody obviously different.
Yeah.
But if that happened, if somebody came up and they lost all this weight and they just don't look right, what do you do, doc?
Yeah.
What do you let it go on? Do you tell the boss? Do you say, no, he's not fighting? Or how does that work?
We're more likely to not let them fight, especially if they can't stand, they're on the brink of passing out. They're very pale, they're very clear. There's a change. You can see it, you can feel it, when you're examining them.
Their eyes are back here.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
look,
they really get sunken in. They're actually not with it because there's a lot of data on severe dehydration and mental capacity. They're not with it. They're not engaging in conversations. They're not really following instructions very well.
Unfortunately, I've never had to deal with that. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy, man. So hey, doc, what do you think about when we're refereeing and you're seeing a fight? Because you have the ability. You and me have the ability. I'm a referee. You're a doctor. You can overrule me and stop a fight. So has that ever happened in your career yet?
No, I've never had to do that. We have had situations where we had to.
Will you give us the evil eye?
No. We had to politely go up on the ring and say,
and you know what?
Attention. So,
and I say that if the doc has to get up and let me put it my way, force his will on me, Andy Foster and the doc are probably going to sit me down and rip me a new one. You know what I mean? Because if the doc is going to come up and I say this in a selfish way, put me on blast and just come up and say, Ray, you need to stop this fight. I'm going to get sat down, But thank God so far it hasn't happened, right?
No. I mean, everyone's on point. I mean, you guys are great. And, it's really interesting. And this is something I always talk about is a perspective, right? And for the fans, actually, I think this is something, I talk with my friends a lot about this because there's a very different perspective when you're in the ring, like you guys, when we're sitting ringside, and further you move back, the perspective changes. So
yeah, you fans, huh?
Yeah, it's really important because we talk about this too with fans because the furthest back you can be is your living room, right? So
that's a good one. Yeah.
You're watching it on TV. Yeah. So I've heard from a lot of the refs that when they're in the ring, you guys are hearing the thuds. You're hearing the guys go, ugh. You're hearing them react to the punches, right? Ringside, we don't always hear that. We hear the punches, but I don't hear the responses, the grunts and everything. And then, think about the fans sitting in the audience. They are seeing the punches. They're hearing a little bit of it. I will tell you that on TV, you watch a fight on TV that you know that there was a discrepancy in punching power, and one fighter looks like he was really laying into it, and the other fighter was taking those punches really well, and it didn't look. The perception was that he was taking the punches. Maybe the other guy really wasn't hitting that hard, but it actually just turns out that this guy was really dishing out at maybe 30%. This guy's dishing out at 80%, but he was taking the punches really well. When you're sitting in your living room, you don't get that idea, that perspective. When we're sitting ringside and it looks like we're stopping a fight that everyone's like, hey, that was competitive, what's going on? There's a discrepancy. There's a reason for it. And,
do you hear that, fans? And that's why I wanted you to hear from Dr. Khan, a doctor, because again, more power to the fans. They're critical of us, but now you're hearing it, from the horse's mouth, These guys are physicians that know what the brain goes through. And with that said, explain to the fans, what is a knockout? When you see a fighter lock up or hit his head, what's the big deal? You know, a couple of days later, they're cool, but why didn't we stop the fight?
Yeah, it's automatically a concussion. So you lose consciousness, you're not aware of your surroundings. Even if, we've all seen fights where somebody will get knocked out and they pop right back up as if nothing happened, but actually they were out. And a lot of times, and I know a lot of the refs have experienced this, where the fighter will square up on the ref. They don't know where they are. That's a short-term amnesia that comes with a concussive injury. And it's very important to recognize those as a significant injury, because the risk for a significant brain injury, like even a small bleed in the brain that could turn into a big bleed, that's a very high possibility.
So a bleed is a bleed, Doc? Does it matter one is bigger than the other? A bleed's a bleed, right?
A bleed.
And that's what you're doing. Tell the fans, what are you asking a fighter when you go in there trying to evaluate him after he's been knocked out? What are you asking him? You asking for his license or something? Or what? Tell the fans, what are you asking? What kind of questions are you asking a fighter?
Yeah, where'd you leave your wallet? You know, what should you come with? I'm not getting paid a lot for this, you know.
That's
just
right.
tell me I'm kidding. So, you know, we want to get an idea if they're aware of their surroundings. Hey, do you know what round this was? Because you guys are always telling, I see it. Hey, this is round 3. You know, the fighters are aware of what's going on. Do they remember a lot of the questioning that we had? Where did you come from? You know, a lot of fighters are out of state. What's your birthday? You know, we just kind of give them the basic questions that they would know right off the tip of their tongue, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, if they're not able to answer a lot of these questions, then we're most likely going to say, no, I'm sorry, you know, you got to go to the hospital. If they're not coming out of it quick enough. We've had guys that their memory just doesn't come back for, you know, a couple minutes after. That's a concerning sign, you know. It's not uncommon for them to be amnestic for a couple seconds afterwards. But, you know, one of the other things that we have to gauge too, and this may sound a little bit kind of neither here nor there, but there's some fighters that stay down on the canvas because they don't want to get up, because of ego, you know, or maybe something. So we were really trying to distinguish between that issue too. And, you know, because if I'm in the ring, I'm going to try to decide if I need to send you to the hospital. That's, you know, I need to check out.
I never thought of it like that. Yeah, you're right.
Sometimes when you see the fighters down on the canvas for a little bit of time, I hear the commentating all the time, oh, so-and-so is still on the canvas. And, you know, and it's happened a couple of times where I've gone in and, you know, you say, you know, you're looking at the fighter, you're talking to the fighter, they're talking to you, they just don't want to get up yet. And it's sometimes maybe a pride thing, sometimes whatever, but I'm not getting the impression that there's a physical danger to the fighter and I have to really get them out of there right away, you know. So sometimes that's also something that's going on that a lot of fans may not be aware of, but that doesn't happen very often. I mean, anyone that gets knocked out, it's a knockout, it's a concussive injury. We're going to ensure that the fighter is not in imminent danger of something worse.
And tell the fans, Doc, I actually don't know that answer, but I know there's a certain suspension behind if you get knocked out or knocked down or stopped.
Yeah.
There's a difference between stop, a technical knockout, or a knockout. What is the suspension on that?
So in California state, we suspend them for 45 days, right? They can't.
On a TKO?
Yeah, on a TKO, KO, anything that requires a stoppage of the fight, they're suspended for 45 days, right?
And that means with their license, they're not even supposed to be in the gym sparring, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get ready for the next one.
Yeah.
Now, what about just a straight knockout? What is that? Is that a longer suspension?
We have the option to suspend them longer. You know, we can actually suggest that they are reviewed by a neurologist. They have to be cleared by a certain thing. Maybe they need MRI study. Even if they're up and around, they don't have to go to hospital right away. We can suspend them, but still say, hey, I need you to go through these measures before we ensure you can get back in the ring.
So he won't be able to fight until that is cleared,
yes,
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
See,
right.
Hey, I know in the world they have doctors, but I'm telling you, California State Athletic Commission, Andy Foster, and Dr. Wallace, they keep everybody accountable. California is the most busiest state. So let me get to these other questions. What do you see? So during the pre-physical, when you do your weigh-ins, what are the weigh-ins all about? What do you, first you give them their physical, obviously. And if they pass that, then they go to their weigh-ins. But why can't they just show up and just get on the scale?
Yeah.
Why they got to go through the physical when they already got their license? What's the big deal?
Yeah, so they're showing up a couple hours before the official weigh-in time. And we want to ensure that if they still had weight to lose, they have less than a pound, that they're physically able to do that. Because we're going to give them the opportunity to continue to lose that weight if they need to do it. So we're looking at hemodynamics to understand whether the fighter is already coming in dehydrated and pretty dry, and they still have a pound or two to lose. So if that's the case, then we won't let them lose the weight. But if it looks like they're physically able to and they're still kind of going at it, then hey, we might say, all right, go ahead, and just wait and make sure that they're safe once they get on the scale. Once they get on the scale, some of them may want to get on the scale before and see, but I'm going to check them again, and I'm going to make sure that they're not really running themselves dry, because at the end of the day, they're putting themselves at risk for the next day. But when we do physicals, part of the reason I actually like doing the pre-fight physicals, I think some people don't really, they don't like doing it as much, it's a lot of busy work, but it's okay because, that's really our job to do this.
Yeah.
And, we're assessing the fighter from the minute they walk into the room. So I'm always watching what's going on. So I'm watching how the fighter is coming into the room. I'm watching their interaction with their coaches and what's happening. I'm watching how they're moving around the room to understand whether I'm looking for an injury or something is going on. So from that, on the pre-fight physical, it's going to tell me a little bit of what I'm seeing in the ring as well. So if I've said the fighter is okay to go into the ring and actually compete the next day, then if there's something that physically might still be off, I want to see if it's going to negatively impact them, right?
Yeah.
But if they're physically able to go through the fight, why not? Let them go ahead and fight. This is what they're here for. But I'm looking at every little detail so that when it comes the day of the fight
night,
I'm watching their movement. I want to see if they were able to actually perform despite whatever might be going on with them, right? And again, this is not, I'm letting somebody fight that's severely dehydrated and I'm putting them in the ring that puts them at a high risk of a brain injury or really a career-ending injury. We don't want that. But everyone has little things. The other thing is that we're looking at, one of the questions I ask most fighters, if not all of them, is when was your last sparring? That's a big question.
I was going to get to that too.
Yeah, that's one of the main questions I like to ask during pre-fight physicals because, everyone knows. I mean, I guess if you're a fighter, and even if you're a fan that was a fighter, there's no light sparring. Everybody says light sparring. I've been in the gyms. I've trained.
Yeah.
There's no light sparring. So
especially coming up to the fight, these fighters want to look so good. They want to get a knockout. Their ultimate goal is to look good and get a knockout.
That's right.
They're going to go in there and spar like they're trying to take each other's heads off. That's why, tell me if I'm wrong, Doc, or if I shouldn't even say that. Some of these fighters are already damaged when they come to the fight.
That happens. Yeah, and that's where sometimes when we're looking at injuries or significant injuries that happen, we see it on the news or whatever happens, we're looking at it saying, God, that fight didn't look like it was that compelling. Yeah. Again, we're watching it on TV again. But that fight didn't look like there was a lot going on. What was going on before? So everyone kind of downplays it a little bit to say, well, no, I had light sparring, or, I haven't sparred for a long time. And it's an interesting thing, because not everybody does it. I was watching a fight the other day on a one championship, right? And a lot of these fighters are Muay Thai fighters. There was one guy, I can't remember his name. Well, I'll try to look up this fight. He was an older gentleman, well known in the Muay Thai community. The guy trains out of his garage. He doesn't spar. He has no formal gym that he goes to, but he's always won his fights. Like, he's been in the game for a long time. But he doesn't put himself through sparring, because he understands that there's injuries that happen in sparring that may affect you later on in the ring. And I'm not saying that, from just a fighter's perspective, that that's a wrong thing to do, or, maybe they shouldn't do it. But when I think it's very important, to be honest with you, to learn all the little nuances that you have to learn in the ring. But from a medical perspective, and keeping yourself as safe as possible to run in this career as long as you can, don't get injured in sparring.
And this is where that question was coming up: the difference between boxing and MMA.
Yeah.
For the simple fact, I go to Millennia MMA gym in Rancho Cucamonga, and when those guys spar, they go like, if there's a gauge, they go like maybe 50 to 75%. For the simple fact, if they're fighting next week, they can't kick the guy in the leg or get an arm bar or give him an elbow because that'll prevent them from even fighting.
Yes.
Why can't we implement that in boxing? You know what I mean? And with that said, what difference do you see injuries in MMA?
Compared to boxing.
Compared to boxing.
MMA, it's a lot of joint issues. That's really the main thing.
So if a guy comes into a weigh-in, you're doing the weigh-ins for an MMA fight, which we have a lot too, and you notice he can't lift his arm, I'm good, doc, I'm just, or you know what, I got a little limp, or he's all swollen on one side.
Yeah.
Is he gonna fight?
Nope. No, not gonna fight.
No matter if he yells at you and screams at you, and I don't care.
I don't.
That's right.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like, if he gets injured severely in the ring, it's like, well, the doctor examined me.
Yeah.
It's not a CYA sort of thing, but it's like, if you're going to come in to the pre-fight physicals injured, I'm going to do my best to see. If you fail my exam, trust me, you're going to fail in the ring. That's really how it is, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to go hard in sparring. But I've seen it. You've been in the gyms. I've been in the gyms. A friendly sparring match doesn't stay friendly long.
It doesn't stay friendly.
And all it takes is one good hit, and that's it. It's not friendly anymore.
And with that said, the ladies in boxing, what's their criteria as far as, is it any different than a male? I mean, they got to pass a physical like a regular male and a regular female, but I've been afraid to ask a woman that, but does it hurt when they get hit in the chest?
Yeah, does it hurt when you get hit in the chest?
You know what I mean? I'm just wondering, because in California, that's optional, right?
It is, yeah.
So I'm like, and you know what? I've done a couple of women's, and I'm afraid to ask. I just don't know how to ask. So I usually ask the doctor, does she have to wear a protective bra, or just it's the options on them, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue for them, no.
But I hear that you guys still ask them if they're not pregnant or they're pregnant. They have to take those tests, right? So I know the men don't have to.
They don't have to take. Most of the men don't have to sign off on a pregnancy test. Thank God.
Thank God for that.
Oh, God, you have a lot of scares.
Really, God.
They just have to sign off on it. We're not testing them. We're not testing.
Okay.
It's really just, you have to just say you're not.
Because nowadays that gets into politics, and I'm not going to even get into that,